Hi, and welcome to part one of By the Numbers. A look at the Midrashim, a look at selected Midrashic statements composed by the rabbis on the early part of the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar, which we are starting this Shabbos. The rabbis in the Midrash have wide-ranging objectives. Just to give you an idea of how wide-ranging they might be, what the rabbis in the Midrash are doing essentially is they are taking, or often I should say, not always, but they are taking a topic in the Torah portion and they are either elaborating on it or they're using it as a jumping off point for a larger topic. So this is not really dissimilar from what rabbis do in synagogues. Right? Rabbis sometimes elaborate on the Torah portion and fill in a lot of detail. This might be going on before or during the Torah reading. And then during the sermon, rabbis will take something, oftentimes out of context, but they will take something and elaborate on it a great deal. So that's what Midrash does. We're going to take a look today at one of the very first Midrashim in the Midrash on Bamidbar, on Numbers. And the Midrash here wants to know why it is that the Torah was given Bamidbar Sinai. Why was the Torah, right? The portion begins, the book of Numbers begins, Vayedaber Adonai al Moshe b'midbar Sinai. God spoke to Moshe in the wilderness of Sinai. Lama b'midbar Sinai. So why is it that the Torah was given in the wilderness of Sinai? I'm going to read to you from the English, and I'm from the Hebrew first, but I'm also going to give you the English translation up on your screen. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai, and God spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. Lama b'midbar Sinai. Why the wilderness? Why the Sinai wilderness? Mikan shanu chachamim. From here, the sages taught b'shlosha devarim nitna Torah, that the Torah is given with three things: be'esh, with fire; b'mayim, and with water; uvamidbar, and with wilderness. Be'esh minayin, how do we know that the Torah was given with fire? Because the Torah says in the book of Exodus, chapter 19, and Mount Sinai was all in smoke, as God had come down upon it in fire. V'har Sinai ashan kulo, mitnei she'ar Hashem alo ba'esh. Okay, so the Torah was given with fire. At the revelation, there was fire going on. Uva mayim, minayin, how do we know water? Shenemar, because there's a verse in Shoftim in the book of Judges, which, referring to Mount Sinai, says that on that day the heavens dripped and the clouds dripped water. Right? So there was water going on also. Along with the fire, there was also water. Okay. And Uva Midbar Minayin, how do we know that it was given through wilderness? Because it says, Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai. We just saw this verse, right? God said to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. Sinai was a wilderness. V'lama nitna b'shlosha devarim halolu. And why was the Torah given through these three things? And here is the upshot, if you will, the lesson. Elama eluchinam l'chol boi ha'olam. Just as fire, water, and wilderness are free to all the inhabitants of the world, the words of Torah are also free. Shenemar, and here's a beautiful play on the water part anyway. The verse from Isaiah says, Hoi kol tzomei l'chula mayim. Everyone who is thirsty, l'chula mayim, let them go and get water. And here, Isaiah is referring not to water specifically, but to the idea of Torah. So our Midrash begins by telling us that the setting which God chose is very, very intentional, and the surroundings, the production values are very much intended. The setting is in the wilderness. Anybody can go into the wilderness and walk in the wilderness. It's public domain. And also given through water, right? Water's available to everybody. Presumably, it's you can go down to the river and take water. Nowadays, with water rights and all of the privatization of water that goes on, especially in third world countries. This is unfortunately not true, but a digression and a subject for another day. And then finally, through fire, right? Mount Sinai was burning with fire, right? So fire, listen, fire is free. You want fire, you just got to go to fire. There's a fire going on, walk over with a stick, walk over with something flammable, you can take the fire. Nobody really cares if you take fire from their fire. So these things are all free to teach us that anybody who wants Torah, come and get it. It's free for the taking. Now the Midrash adds a second idea, a beautiful, beautiful idea. Davar acher, another explanation, back on your screen again. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe b'midbar Sinai. God spoke to Moses in the Sinai wilderness. Elokol mishena osa atzmo k'midbar. Anyone who does not make themselves ownerless like the wilderness, hefker, that means ownerless, eno yachol liknos es hachachma v'Torah. You can't gain the wisdom in the Torah. L'kach nemar b'midbar Sinai. The reason why it says that God spoke to Moshe b'midbar Sinai is to emphasize that a person who wishes to acquire Torah and the wisdom therein must make themselves like a midbar, must make themselves free and open. Haughtiness, arrogance, these things are not going to bring somebody to a knowledge and appreciation of Torah. But if a person makes themselves hefker midbar, they say, listen, I'm hefker, I'm ownerless. I don't have any stake in this. I just want the truth. Anybody who just wants the truth and doesn't have any personal stake in it and doesn't really say, I have to bring my preconceived notions, if you can come without preconceived notions and just confront and meet the Torah where it is, that's how a person can achieve greatness in Torah. That's how a person can learn the Torah and appreciate its wisdom. The rabbis here are doing more than just elaborating and, creating ideas. What the rabbis are saying is that God could have given the Torah anywhere. The fact that God chose a specific setting, namely on Mount Sinai, and we'll see more about Mount Sinai in a future midrash, but gave it on Mount Sinai, in a wilderness, in a place which was ownerless. These factors are all meaningful. It's meaningful that the Torah was given on a mountain and not in a valley. It was meaningful that it was given on this specific mountain and not on any other mountain. It's meaningful that there was fire and that there was water. Anything that God brought into the equation in order to enhance the experience has meaning and is teaching us a lesson. No detail of the Torah and no detail of God's actions are empty. Through all of them, the Midrash strives to understand as best as possible what it is that God intended. We're going to take a look tomorrow at another Midrash about Mount Sinai, and we'll also take a look a little bit about the location. We'll talk a little bit about the location of Mount Sinai, which is no simple thing to determine. But we'll take a look at those tomorrow. But again, for today, our message is very simple, right? The Torah is there. It's free for everyone to take. If we come with the right attitude towards the Torah, we can be successful in gaining in Torah knowledge and Torah wisdom, and it can affect our lives and the lives of everyone around us. Thanks for being with us today.